In my last Mass Effect Andromeda video, I analyzed one particular cutscene that genuinely blew me away with its excellent facial and body animation. I deemed it to be the best animated cutscene in the entire game. Particularly staggering was the remarkable disparity between the quality of this scene and the rest of the game, and I just had to talk about it. Now, the sequence in question happens to be Cora Harper's sex scene, so it was kind of awkward talking about it in so much detail, but it was for science. For those who missed it, I basically broke down all of Ryder and Cora's subtle animation nuances that brought these characters and the scene to life. This is the only scene in the game where I actually feel like I'm watching living, breathing people interacting with each other, and the devil was in the details. It's a complete contrast to all other scenes in the game, which were often plagued by stiff and at times downright terrible animations. So after I finished my last video, the first question that came to mind was, how the hell did this happen? How is it that one scene looks so much better than the rest? Well, turns out there is a good explanation for this disparity. No, it wasn't that BioWare Montreal blew all their animation budget on sex scenes because boobs and ass. Although it's still pretty hilarious that Andromeda's best looking cutscene happens to be a sex scene. I'm never gonna get over that. All joking aside, there is a good explanation. I learned recently that one man was responsible for the entirety of Cora's romance scene, a talented animator going by the name of Tal Peleg. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If you go to his website right now, talpeleg.com, you can find an embedded video that fully details how the scene was created. Here's the basic rundown. When it comes to body animation, there was actually some motion capture involved. However, I was told that because the motion capture actors were shy and reserved, they didn't do a lot of the more intimate actions like the thrusting, gripping, caressing, passionate kissing, and quote, all the fun stuff. Instead, they did the basic key body motions for the scene, like the walking, hugging, carrying, and some fake close-lipped kissing. And from there, Tal refined and reanimated everything by hand. So a lot of the little touches and body animation you see in this scene was all Tal and his intent on giving the scene as much sensual and erotic flair as he could get away with. Now, even more impressive is the fact that all of the scene's facial animations were keyframed by hand. There was zero facial capture involved. In fact, I don't think Andromeda used any facial capture at all throughout the entire game. So with this scene, Tal literally handcrafted every little facial animation nuance and subtlety for both characters. Every eyebrow furrow, every muscle twitch, every smile, every movement of the lips and tongue, every expression, and all of the lip syncing was arduously keyframed by Tal. And for a mostly handcrafted cutscene, I have to say, this is pretty amazing stuff. The kissing in particular is some of the most technically impressive I've seen in a video game. Usually when video game characters kiss, their lips will clip through each other and it looks really awkward, but in Tal's scene, it all looks so natural and real. If somebody told me that most of this scene was performance captured, I'd believe them. In fact, a few people commented in my last video that they were sure the entire scene was performance captured, but turns out that most of it wasn't. Now, you might be thinking, if Tal Peleg is so good at what he does, and if he was involved in Andromeda, how come more scenes don't have the same fidelity? Well, I learned that Tal Peleg was brought into Andromeda's animation team very late in the development process, during post-production in fact. As a result, Cora's romance scene was the only big one that he was assigned to, and the only one that he really had time to work on, with what little time there was left until the game's release and all. He did contribute to a few other smaller sequences though, according to his animation reel. He worked on the animation where Ryder wakes up from cryogenic stasis, although I did notice that the final version of the sequence got downgraded. In Tal's early version, you can see lots of subtle eyebrow and facial movements, and some muscle contractions, particularly in the neck area. But none of these details made it into the final game. He also worked on some of the Archon's facial animations for certain scenes. In retrospect, some of the Archon's facial animations did look better in some scenes than others, and this explains why. But yeah, Cora Harper's romance scene and a few other minor scenes aside, Tal Peleg's involvement in Andromeda was minimal and came late in the process, so he couldn't really go hands-on and tune up all of the other cutscenes. It's a damn shame. I can only imagine how much better Andromeda's animations would have looked if Tal had been brought in earlier and if he had been more deeply involved. But hey, at least BioWare recognized Tal's talents. He is now an animator for their upcoming new game, Anthem, and a lot of his work can already be seen in the E3 2017 gameplay demo. He and his team worked on the animated performance of Praxley, the character seen at the beginning of the video. They worked on the animation of the player character entering the exosuit, the bit where the player character in his exosuit is walking out to the ramp, the animation of the Strider's destruction, along with the surrounding dynamic trees and environment, and more, all of which look excellent, I might add. So yeah, it's safe to say that Anthem's animations are in pretty good hands. As for previous work that he's done prior to Andromeda, his portfolio is quite impressive as well. Turns out that he used to work for Naughty Dog, where he keyframed scenes for renowned games like The Last of Us and Uncharted 4. Tal Peleg is also responsible for the all-too-famous Joel Banderas GIF that has become beloved among PlayStation fans, which is a masterpiece within itself. He's also working on a fanfiction animation of EA's Dante's Inferno called Dante's Redemption, which looks really cool and really well animated. So yeah, this Tal Peleg fellow is a force to be reckoned with in the animation field. And it's no wonder that the few scenes that he did work on for Andromeda turned out to be so excellent. But yeah, there you go. If you ever wondered why Korra's sex scene looks so much better than all other cutscenes in Andromeda, it's because they were touched by the divine hands of ex-Naughty Dog animator and now BioWare animator Tal Peleg. This dude honestly deserves a ton of kudos for showing us what Andromeda could have looked like had BioWare paid the same amount of care and attention to animation as Tal Peleg did. I'm also just genuinely impressed by what he can pull off with such minimal use of performance capture. The dude honestly does some really masterful work with keyframe animations made by hand. It is a craft that is much more difficult to master than it looks, and this dude's got it. He's got the keen attention to detail that you need for this line of work. The only real shame in all of this is that Tal Peleg wasn't involved sooner or more extensively during Andromeda's development. We could have been looking at an entirely different game under different circumstances. Anyway, that's it for this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon to help our community remain independent from corporate interference. And to be further updated on all things BioWare, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.